Hello, you're listening to UNS Talks, a podcast by the International Architecture and Design Office, UNStudio. Here in our conversations, we deconstruct the built world and talk about what it truly means to design in a human-centric way. I'm your host, Liva Sadovska, and today we're coming to you from our headquarters here in Amsterdam, a city that is as beautiful and vibrant as it is also diverse. Today, to mark International Women's Day, we sat down to talk about the importance of inclusivity and even more so representation in architecture and design. What does it mean to be in the world? How do you design for everyone? And what does inclusivity mean in the first place? So today I'm sitting down with my colleagues Marianthi and Sugandha to discuss the importance of this representation. Thank you both for being here. Before we dive deep into the topic, could you introduce yourselves and explain why did you join UNStudio? What drove you here?
I'm Sugandha, and I'm working as a senior strategic and business development officer here at UNStudio. I joined UNStudio 2 years back, and I'm originally from India, but have been in the Netherlands for last 8-9 years now. And UNStudio, I'm in the architecture field like since 17 years or so as well, including my studies. And as an architecture student, of course, you want to work at UNStudio, right? So yes, that's definitely one of the motivations. After like 4 years in urban design, I wanted to switch to business development, and then of course there was a position at UNStudio, and I also saw our manager Marktel in a lot of videos, being that communication person. So that was very inspiring, and yeah, that was one of the reasons why I actually came in.
Great. Marianthi.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me, Liva and Sugandha, for sharing this with you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, my name is Marianthi Tatari. I am a director here in Amsterdam, running a studio. I have been in UNStudio since 2007, so quite some years. So I have seen the office growing from 70 people to where we are now, which is, I think, quite impressive as a
Indeed.
change and transformation. I'm originally from Greece. I have studied in Greece. I have studied in France, but also in the United States. So when I was in the US, living in Los Angeles, trying to come back to Europe to be closer to family and home, I thought that Amsterdam is a good place to stop. And also, partly also because of what you said, it's a beautiful and very diverse city, but also because UNStudio, for me, UNStudio was more of a design philosophy that I always attracted me about people and how people move, and the book Move, and so everything that came with that philosophy of the 2000s. Yeah, now I'm here. I really like it. I really like UNStudio, but I also really like Amsterdam. I have my family here, so yeah, it's it's part of my life now.
Yeah, so you really joined the design thinking. That is one of the reasons why you moved and why you started working here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, I think one core aspect of UNStudio DNA is including as much data and research and coming from a place of knowledge and real understanding what's happening in the world now, but also in the next 30, 40, 50, or many more years to come. And part of that is analyzing and taking critical insights into what's happening. And one of the things we've recognized also in conversations with our colleagues is that sometimes data can be skewed and sometimes the design falls short of accommodating everyone. So the topic of inclusivity naturally keeps coming back in our conversations, both in the video that we've just released on the International Women's Day and also in our everyday design practice. So sometimes inclusivity can be such an umbrella term, but let me ask you, what is inclusivity? What is true inclusivity in design? What does it look like? Is it that in the design practice? Is it overarching concept? What are your thoughts? What does it mean?
Yes. I was describing once someone, a lot of people work in architecture offices. They say, I work on retail sector. I work on residential sector. I work on this. I work on that. In UNStudio, we work in every project, no matter what scale or typology, and even actually geography, where it is in the world. But what connects us is the human-centric design. And I think that our brains, let's say, are tuned into that, into a way of thinking of the human first,
Yeah.
and then maybe on how the human moves and how the human connects and how actually this creates a community and it's part of the city, or it's a part of an office building, or it's part of a residential community. So we really place people first, and actually also more and more nature and people together. And this becomes a starting point of how we can have them healthy in terms of physical and social and mental health, but also how we can make them come together, and how can people create their best in a space or in what they do.
Yeah, and as you say, there is the scaled back approach when you're looking as an urban planner, when you're looking at the overall picture, and then there's also the human aspect.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd like to hear Sugandha's opinion on this, because you work in business development, right?
Yeah.
So you're often looking both at the numbers and the proposals and the needs and the client's specific brief,
Yeah.
but also as someone with architectural education and immersed in design every day here in the office, and I'm sure beyond. How do you see inclusivity, both in this, as I said, the scaled back approach from the numbers, and really zooming in the intuitive approach in what the visitor is actually going to feel and see and smell when they visit the project? How do you see inclusivity in all of
I
this?
think for me, like in general, the concept of inclusivity is really about representation. So, like, be it coordinating a bid, or be it putting together a proposal, we always try to make sure that we are working with the locals. So we are working with the having the cultural insight that we should have in from this local context. For example, we also, of course, try to have all the services in on board with us. So I think it's really important that these different needs and desires of the users who are going to be the end users should be there on the table. So someone has to bring it, right? So we try to make sure that we have those kind of consultants on board with us to do that project. So I think that's something that's really important, and that's also what I really try to push forward for when we are indeed putting together proposals and bids in my role presently at UNStudio.
So you mean also diversity in the design
Yeah.
team?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Not only
yes.
from UNStudio, but in the wider
in
team.
the wider team. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And this is becoming a bigger topic also in bids that you put, especially in North America, for example, in the US. They're really regulating this to have specific percentages of a women minority owned businesses, so that you make sure that, let's say what you said, the local representation
Yes.
is diverse. But it's also kind of a requirement.
Yeah.
Other places, I think, in the world have to more come up to speed to that.
Yeah,
but you see it more and more.
Indeed. For example, in Australia, they also have these conditions that you should have the First Nation consultancy. That should be there in your. That should be part of your proposals.
So
I
it's
think
a
that's
requirement.
Good. It's a requirement,
Yeah.
and it's really good, because then you're pushed forward to do that, and which is great, because these kind of insights you just cannot have without including the people for whom you are going to design for, right? So
Yeah.
you need to.
And I think what is interesting also with what you're saying is that our team, let's say the business development team, then and actually our team as well.
Yeah.
You then learn from it, and then you do
Yeah.
it also on more projects,
Yeah.
even though if it's not a requirement. So
Yes.
you kind of you strive for
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
You develop that
Yeah.
natural sense, that
Yeah.
intuition you
Yeah.
were talking about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I really like what you just touched on,
Mhm.
that when you work with locals, you really see the human side come out of it. Not just the requirements or what's put on paper, not just the architectural intuition that we tend to develop and always keep working on. And talking about this cultural sensitivity, I mean, it's all based on experience, right? At the end of the day, someone is going to walk through this building, and even though we started with very conceptual, I would say even buzzwords, sometimes we start with these vague requirements, but at the end of the day, someone can touch the building, and it goes through this crazy black box process of how do you go from something so conceptual to physical, and it's there, and you have to deal with it. And then I wonder about your own experience before and after architectural education, before you immerse yourself in the context of why things are the way they are built. Could you perhaps share, how did you experience the world purely as a user before you got immersed into the world, and after? What was the process? Did you notice your thinking change? Did you start experiencing the world differently? Did it teach you any lessons about designing for someone?
It's
problem
such a,
is-
yeah, exactly. We have
The
always
problem
been
is, before you studied architecture, you were a teenager.
exactly.
So
I
the
remember-
life is also different back then, and the brain doesn't focus on
yeah, these
the
kind of
same
things.
parts. So
Yeah.
it is also, I think, it's a three-dimensional part. It's like architecture, but it's also life, right? What you, let's say, maybe focus on more before, which could be. I think before you come into the profession, you focus more on how you feel in a space, how you feel in a city, how you interact and how you see. So it's more about, let's say, your personal evaluation, but personal comfort on different situations. When you start designing, you start being very critical, I would
about
say.
it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So then you're like, yeah, I wish this was. Then it's more. I think there is a period that it becomes more formal. So you're like, I wish this was more, a different shape or different, or more fluid or less fluid, or to bring it to UNStudio as well. And for me personally, right now, and also maybe also on projects we can work on how we work, is also how you can create more impact on people's life, or on the city, or in bringing health, or bringing people together.
Yeah.
I'm really very interested in this, and maybe this is also where your personal ambitions, or your inclusive intuition comes into place, to make sure that what you do can be experienced by a lot of people, or maybe some specific people, but can make a difference in their life, and also maybe in the ecosystem this lives in. So I really am very interested in that, and how we create impact, and how we actually, I don't know, empower other people with our designs, and with our spaces, and with our, maybe it's also processes, because as you said, that you enter into this black box, but this black box is years of hard work.
Oh, yes.
So I think also as designers, or as professionals, we influence each other, and we make each other better during our lives, and this is also very interesting to me,
But
how we become
yeah.
better people as well.
As you said, it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
even after so many years, I'm sure you're still learning
Yeah,
and picking
sure.
up in every project. What you actually just described is a journey of maturing also in your design thinking, and starting from being the one that experiences to the one who designs the experience, and maybe is more hyper aware of things, but for a good reason, because we
Yeah.
want to improve the world. And as you mentioned, when you're younger, before you enter the architectural school, it's all about sensing and feeling. But at the same time, it's a very crucial period in your life when you learn about the world, when you learn how to sense the world, or what is acceptable or not. That's why, teenagers can sometimes be testing of boundaries,
Yeah.
because we're still learning about the world.
Yeah.
But I like the word you use, sensing and feeling, because
Yeah.
this is a really a good word for the inclusive, I think, design as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
It connects back to what you said, that as designers we have the responsibility to develop this sense
Mm-hmm.
towards understanding who we're actually designing for,
Yeah.
and not just the general group, but really the people, the locals, you know,
Users.
the person
Yeah.
on the street.
Mm.
But maybe to connect it back to experiencing architecture. Sugandha, I know that you moved here from India
Yeah.
and you moved to the Netherlands, and that's quite a difference in experiencing the world.
Indeed.
Would you mind sharing about how that was for you and how did you experience the change?
Yeah, I think I mean, it is definitely a big change also because I don't come from a big city in India. So India is also huge. And I come from a smaller city, a small town. Studied there as well. So yeah, for a huge part of my life, I was, just with in my hometown. So it was quite a different culture. I mean, probably I can talk about the educational institution. Let's say that I grew in architecture back home in India and here. And yeah, I mean, in India, it's a lot about how you do academically, right? Like
Hmm.
you are judged according to that, and you have to make a mark. Okay, how did you score good in your exams? And I come here as the brightest and the best student, and I fail my first quarter.
Oh,
So it was like a shock for me, and I was
personal
like,
hit.
it was
Yeah.
it's a completely different culture that I'm in, and I fail. And I think that was the best thing that I learned from there, from Delft University, that you fail, but then you rise up again. And how do you really build up yourself again on those lines? Again, found really good mentors here as well to support me on it. But I think that was really a lifelong lesson for me, because it happens all the time, right? Like you just cannot be the best always. So you do fail, but then you rise up again and you give your best shot again. So I think that was one of the cultural differences that I felt in the education part.
And I
Yeah,
think this we
so
also have it a lot at the UNStudio,
yeah,
right? That you are experimenting a lot. You do a
exactly.
lot of not only with the kind of design ideas, but also with the way we work with knowledge sharing,
Yes.
and also like kind of on the way we organize ourselves, on the way we create business, new
Yeah.
ideas, new initiatives, and then something else we transform. And I think this is also what is fascinating
Yes.
in terms of yeah, the culture here at UNStudio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's also like, I mean, UNStudio is also an Amsterdam-born, Netherlands-born company. So then it also has a very sturdy, let's say, vibe, and of really foreseeing also innovation and the technology part, which is so interesting, because then you are really seeing the future and how is it going to be, which is super interesting. It was also again something that was culturally very different for me, because uh, in the Netherlands you're always planning for things. In India you are just very ad hoc. You're never planning for stuff. So I think was also is a learning, and is something that can really take you to the next step.
Maybe a very, practical example, but it also gives you the upper hand in understanding, for example, the passage of time, right? That's also a cultural layer
Yeah.
that is different from project to project. And
Yes.
these kind of life experiences where you grew up, I'm sure, Marianthi, you would have the same from growing up in Greece.
Mhm.
They add to your thinking and understanding of what a project needs and what design method is worth exploring and what's not. And I think that's also a strength we have here in the office, because while it is a Dutch company, as you said, very rarely
Yeah.
you would
Yeah,
find
started
someone.
as that, right? But
Yeah,
like, of course, very, very international.
it's
So
a very
maybe, yeah,
international office, and
yeah,
even
indeed.
here we're sitting.
Yes.
Also, none of us are Dutch,
Yeah,
but it is a real strength
exactly.
we have in our teams.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
different experience and something that we bring to the table.
indeed.
Yeah, so we've discussed this different makeup of the office and how different backgrounds and representation of different cultures, experience of time, even knowing different languages, that all ties back into the design process and truly designing for someone, not just a user, but for a specific person that has a name, that has a story, that has a journey, that are going to their office, their house every day. That's all of this knowledge, this personality, as a designer and an architect, it definitely adds and helps to it. I wonder if through your architectural education and experience, if you've noticed changes in the landscape, if you've
Hmm.
noticed the diversity of people coming in, the representation, is that something you've noticed? And what do you think the changes are, or rather should be, in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years? How do you see the future of inclusivity and representation?
It is a bit about having an inclusive, not audience, inclusive table, right? Of decision making, of design making, of making, of user research. So it is that you don't, let's say, focus it only on something that you do and you kind of check the box,
Yeah.
but you carry this thinking in every part of the work or every part of the impact we said we're making. So for me, it is more about infusing it in more layers of the work and of our collaborations. And in a way to see it grow. For example, as we said, cultural context, sometimes you go to a project and you are I am the only woman among 20 people. Then in another location this is already very different, it's much more diverse and not talking only about women and men but much more inclusive. So I really think that the more inclusive your table is, whatever this table is, then it creates a more a richer result in the way we shape the world.
So you see it as a natural occurrence of getting the seat at the table.
Yes, and also kind of spreading it in different tables, like because sometimes we talk about the table as the leadership or the board decision, but it's also the community table, the design team, the users. So it is, I think, throughout. So having diversity throughout, I would say.
Yeah. I really second that. Like that's something that we have been talking about already. So I think representation is something that we all like already need, and then we also need in future. So should be, more and more and not less. So we shouldn't be going back, let's say. So we have, of course, come a long way, and there is a long way to go as well in terms of representation. And I think at UNStudio we do it quite well. I mean, it's like when we talk about these different tables, then we see that there is quite a diverse table that we have at different parts. So it's quite nice.
And
To
also,
also see
everyone is
that, yeah.
now much more thinking about it,
Yeah.
more alert, and also even from the teams and also project teams and also our studios. It's a point of discussion. So I think this is good
Yeah.
in terms of doing work more all together than one side of the spectrum.
What do you think, to provoke you a little bit, what do you think could be the next step? Where could we push even more as designers, as leaders, as people who just experience the world, as the stakeholders, actually? Do you think there's something that we can do more?
I would say yes, definitely, always. We should do more. We should also maybe think of people inclusivity not only in people but also as part of the wider ecosystem in terms of nature, inclusive design. So we should see ourselves as as a bigger part of this world, or our project as a kind of a more instrumental way to make the planet better. And I think as designers, we have the strength, and we have, of course, also the optimism. I mean, that's the thing. Designers are optimists. Otherwise, they wouldn't be designing for so many years. So we have the optimism, we have the ideas, we have the empowerment a lot of times. So it can be done.
Yeah. I think like for me, the one thing would be the community. So I think the community is very, very important. Be it inside any office that we are working with, or be it outside for whom you're designing, for where your context is. I think this community development is super important, and that's they are the people. Yeah, So at the end of the day, you are a human, and you need a community. So that's super important, which is varying, like, of course, globally it's very different in every part of the world, but that's something that we should be focusing on more. And also, like, of course we already do that a lot, but then also then through designs all over the world, maybe foster it a bit more.
It's a skill you can never work your design, your thinking muscle. You can never overwork it. You'll always keep learning.
Yeah.
Indeed, you always learn lessons. And maybe to close it off, there is a saying that hindsight is 20/20, meaning it's easier to judge something that happened or your observations now from a place of knowledge than it was then at that time. Looking back at your many years in design and architecture and the projects that you worked on, is there a lesson that you learned that you think is very relevant for the next years to amplify these effects of inclusivity and what we just discussed, how powerful that can be? Is there a lesson that you took away and you will take into your next years?
Yeah, I think for me, stakeholder involvement is very crucial and very important. So I really like working with a lot of people, let's say, and with more coordination, but then more collaboration levels as well. And I think that's something that I have learned over years, that it works in a much better way when other than when you sit in your own isolated box. So I think this collaboration power is something that I've learned over years and would also like to take forward.
Yeah, never in vacuum, never alone.
No,
Yeah.
no.
I would say something on similar terms, that for me it's all about people. It's about people that we design, but it's also about people that we work with, and the people that you actually need to take care so that they do their best in designing with you, or working with you, or with all of us. So a lot of times, let's say some years ago, you would say trust your intuition when you think it's about people, that and do it, defend them, nurture them, grow them, and help them do their best, because this is how it's a kind of a natural kind of chain. How can I say that? The more you do, the more you also get back as an organization, but also as a design impact. So just kind of believe in people, and that will be, I think, my lesson from the last few years. Yeah. On the way we work, but also the outcomes we have.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing these lessons. I'm sure they're relevant for all of us here in the office and much beyond. And it ties back into the conversation that we've had, how important it is to bring our personal experiences and to never forget that we are actually designing the world that we live in. And observation and collaboration are very powerful tools to, amplify the world, to make it a brighter place for actually everyone. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sitting down here with us. Yeah. And thank you for pitching in here with us in Amsterdam on a beautiful sunny day. I hope you do next time as well, and take care.